Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you might be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 37. We've been doing these for quite a while now. As per usual, I'm going to start us off with a tune.
And to their regimental march for the last time ever, the Rhodesian Light Infantry marches off the parade square and into a secret place in all our hearts. Write their names on rolls of honor, scripted bold in golden splendor. For principle we made a stand, courageous people, splendid land.
The RLI had won all their battles, but the war was lost. Kill rates don't win wars, but during its brief 19-year history, it is estimated that the Rhodesian Light Infantry accounted for between 12 and 15,000 enemy guerrillas, with the loss of 85 men killed in action and 49 men who died on operations. RLI soldiers were recipients of 4 Silver Crosses and 42 Bronze Crosses of Rhodesia. They had done their duty.
And there you go, boys. That was the Rhodesian Light Infantry and their last parade, which would have been about 1978, I think, somewhere around there. Very good regiment from the old Rhodesia, which used to be a very good country. So, okay, chaps.
Before we, have any of you read the book? I think I forgot what it's called now. Is it Bittersweet or Sweet Harvest by Ian Smith?
No, I haven't, but I should.
Oh, that's quite good.
Yeah, I certainly should. I mean, you're talking about Ian Smith, who was the Prime Minister of Rhodesia, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually a RAF Spitfire pilot in World War II.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. There's quite a few good books about Rhodesia out there, actually. But yeah, I haven't read that one. I wish I had. Have you read it, Rolex?
No.
Mitch and Chad, Bit of Harvest. Yeah, that's the one.
Bit of Harvest, Mitch. Yeah, fair enough. I shall add it to my list. There's quite a few books I haven't read that I should have done. All right, guys, I'm going to do what I usually do. Ask us anything you want to bring up as the first topic, and I'll start with Atman because I'm going to go clockwise today.
I don't know what you guys spoke about the last 2 times. I take it we've covered Afghanistan.
We mentioned it, but I mean, I'm quite happy to talk about it again today if you've got something you want to bring up about it, for sure.
No, I think I'll probably avoid it actually.
Anything else that you particularly want to mention, Adam?
Well, I'm more black-pilled than ever. If that's News 21.
Yeah, I'm starting to get that way too, mate. I am starting to get that way myself, I've got to say.
Usually Royal Oak fixes that, so cool.
Yeah, sometimes he has some
okay.
positives.
Well, I don't know. I think Ataman, I think, was aware of a very nice panel that happened. I think this week. I didn't actually watch it, but people said it was very, very good. Of I think it was the Mallard Orthodox Conservatives and I think it was Blue Beyond were the other ones. I think there was some few like kind of mainstream people on the panel and also some more edgy people. I didn't actually watch the panel, but people said it was very good. But yeah, I didn't actually watch it, but I'm
Yeah,
told
I knew about it, but I haven't watched it either. Which
Is this a stream on YouTube you're talking about?
it was an actual physical panel that happened.
Oh, all right. Is it on YouTube?
It is on YouTube, I think.
Do you know which channel?
I think it's on Blue Beyond, which is a bit of a fucking. Blue Beyond's a liberal conservative organization, but there was a broad. There was probably I think the most right wing person on there is like a Spenglerist, so it was like a pretty broad panel. So,
okay. So Blue Beyond. Okay, I'll check it out after the stream.
Yeah, I don't know. That's I suppose I don't know. I think the willingness of like I don't know. I suppose like people like Emily Hewitson and Maya Tusi and Alice Grant and people like that are willing to associate more with people who are a bit further to the right. And I think like I don't know, those ideas being on the table is perhaps a good thing. But I suppose again it's a question of a vision of what people what right the goal of right wing politics is, because they talked about the future of conservatism. I'm not sure what they said exactly. But I think it's a question of like what do you want right wing politics to do? Because like for example, I was thinking this yesterday, like socialists or left wingers, they have like a pretty clear goal of what they want to do, which is collectivize the means of production. Liberals, you could say, or classical liberals at least, you could say, their goal is to maximize liberty. But it's very, very difficult to say what the goal of right wing politics is. You could say it's conserving, but there's you can bring up sort of futurist right wingers who wouldn't necessarily be in favor of conserving. You could say it's order, but I mean, like Tony Blair was pro order, so I mean, I don't know. It's a question of what the main aims are, and I think even on that panel, I'm not even sure if there'd be an agreement as to what the main aims are. But I suppose I'd be interested to hear what other people think, and maybe I'll try myself and say what the aim is. But anyway.
I mean, there does seem to be a little bit of a rightward shift within. It's not really the mainstream right, but like this sort of slightly off-center mainstream right. Like someone's Mitch brought up Maya Tusi, Tusi. I don't know how to say his name. I remember seeing his channel before, and he kind of always came off as one of these more shit lib types, but he's kind of been a bit more out there, even though I don't like to do the old endorsing of the whole based brown person, but yeah, there definitely seems to be more of an opportunity for a conversation there than was possible even 6 months ago. So
yeah, I don't know if I think there are certainly wheels in motion on certain things, and I think he was asked. There was a clip that was on Twitter of Sam Martin, who I think is, as I said, was the most right wing person on the panel, being asked if he thought it was over, and he said, "No, it's never over. Politics is never over," which got clipped. I think it got like 100 likes and 20 retweets or something. But that was a very, I don't know, I suppose that's the anti black pill action. Quotation of the evening. But I don't know. I think it's good that people are sitting down and talking about what the sort of aims are. There's not a lot of people in the room, I suppose. I think probably what you need. I think like people were saying, oh, is conservatism dead, or is right wing politics dead, or whatever. But I think like that sort of attitude will always be present in the population. Like there'll always be a sort of like desire for like kind of home and place and things like that I think a lot of people in the world like perhaps are lacking, and perhaps that might be reasons why people feel certain things. But I think I was thinking this, like what again, it's a question of a vision. And secondly, it's a question of like, I think you'd need someone. You probably, I don't want to say you need a Farage figure, but like someone who can latch onto an issue and just absolutely run with it, like Farage did with the European issue. Like if you went back to 1992, right? You know, Euroscepticism basically had become fringe in both parties essentially. Like most of the Conservative Party were pro EU, pretty much all of the Labour Party are pro EU. And then obviously I think, you know, polls were saying like 80% of the population were pro EU, and you had Farage come in 92, and yeah, the way that you know he sort of tried to ally himself with different figures and things like that. But you know, there are certain, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but he came at, you know, the immigration issue from an angle that people hadn't gone from before. He came at like all these sort of, you know, European issues, and he sort of tried to build a base for that. And you know, over time, he managed to, you know, finally get some traction onto that message. And obviously, then he won 3 national elections, in the European elections. But I don't know. I'm not a man who's full of answers. I suppose like it would need to be. I think if wokeism got so bad that it was like affecting people's, you know, standard like middle class or, you know, upper class people's daily lives to such a high extent, then there would eventually be a backlash towards it. Probably eventually. So I don't know. maybe that's the ride the tiger take. But I think I don't know. I'm hopeful that like. Sorry, Karen.
I was just going to say, do you think Farage is actually done?
I don't think Farage is. I think he probably wants to be. In terms of, I was thinking like, in terms of like dissident figures, that have any control. I think I was thinking like 3 figures. I think there was. I tried to list them off in my head, like people that had a significant audience and were more dissident to the system. And the only 2 I could really name were Galloway and Farage. I think there was one other that I can't remember. Who did I think? There's someone else probably. But I don't know. I think in terms of like bringing down the current so-called conservative government, you know, and holding them to account. You look at national polling. The Tories are falling off in the polls at the moment. I think they're down to like 37-38%. They were up in the 40s. And again, like it brings my mind back to 2019 when there was approval polling between Jeremy Corbyn and Nigel Farage. And I think at one point, I think Corbyn was polling at 19% approval and Farage was polling at 41% approval. Which shows that perhaps like general people probably align more with Farage than with Corbyn. So I suppose like in terms of providing opposition choice, but again, like if you look at the same polls that have come out in the last few weeks, you know, Reform UK is still polling at like 2%, right? So in terms of like providing an opposition to the Tories, it looks like the right hasn't yet been able to do it. I'm not saying they will not be able to, but yeah, again, like people to the right of the Conservative Party's biggest demographic. So yeah, I think that perhaps does have a potential to be, but again, it would need a Farage tier figure probably. Yeah.
I don't know. I think half the problem is that like well, I mean, I don't think there is a right opposition to the Conservatives really. The UK doesn't have an effective, even populist party, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, I think Richard Tice, he's made his focus a lot on economics, which is, you know, you don't win a national election through economic policy. I mean, at the end of the day.
And I mean also that, you know, the one thing that the modern so-called, in inverted commas, Conservative Party is moderately right-wing on is economic policy. So, you know, it's not the best way to attack them, in my view.
I'm a little undecided as to whether perhaps the opposition to Boris would come from the more socially conservative wing of perhaps the 2019 set, or from, you know, a third party. I think eventually it probably would have to come from a third party. I think there has been some social conservative opposition to the current Conservative administration from within the Conservative Party. which I don't know. What time will tell how effective that is. I suppose they had to put stuff in their Queen's speech about fighting against wokeism and things like that. But again, it's words. But I mean, I don't know. It just, I think there just needs to be more pressure from the right, because I feel that, like, if you look at polling, like, most people are to the right of the Conservative Party on most issues. So I think that again is the potential for like a kind of wedge to strike at the current Conservative administration, more than the left. I don't think the left can actually provide an effective opposition to the Conservatives. I think they're just too out of touch, in my view. But...
I agree with that, but I'm just quite interested in what you're saying here, Roy. Like, it seems to me that you have shifted a little bit over the last few months.
On what?
Well, you seem to be a little bit more on our side, if I might say that, of like the Conservatives are not really conservative.
Well, no, I've never, I don't think I've supported the Conservative government since like pretty much soon after they got elected. I think probably the only good thing they did, I think they banned there was some kind of hormone therapy or something that they banned. That was about the only good thing they've done. And I suppose they're less bad than the Labour Party in some ways. I did vote for the Conservatives in the police crime commissioner elections, but that was just because the alternatives was either Liberal Democrats or I think Labour. So I would probably in that situation I would vote for the Conservatives. But I'm not broadly. I don't know. It depends again on the candidate. There's certain candidates that I would support, but generally speaking, I don't know. It feels like it's like they just don't have the teeth to fight the culture war issues. Like, I think perhaps underneath, I think Boris Johnson is perhaps, there's things that have been published that suggest he's perhaps, if not conservative, perhaps more liberal than his administration. Like, I don't think he's necessarily always the one pulling all the strings. Like, I think there's WhatsApp messages that got published about him being more, I think the word would be pessimistic, or what's the word? Skeptical about, the kind of lockdown restrictions that were being implemented, which, is what it is. He hasn't done anything about it, but
and he's the prime minister, so he could.
He's the prime minister, exactly. I mean, I think he's it's sort of almost Machiavellian in his sort of quest for power. I don't think he particularly believed in the whole Brexit thing, but bounced on it because he knew it would get him the leadership eventually, and it did.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I think like that if I voted for Dominic Raab in the Conservative leadership election, which was, I can't remember when it was. Ataman, do you remember when it was? I think it was it 2019? It would have been 2019, wouldn't it? Yeah. I think I voted for Dominic Raab. I don't think he would have been as bad as Johnson has been. I think he's a bit overly liberal on some things, but he's an Anglican. He's can be a little bit more muscular on those kind of, especially on cultural policies. But no.
Adam, what do you think about that stuff, mate?
He's anti-US special relationship.
What, Bojo?
Yeah.
Okay.
He keeps
kind of ironic, seeing as he's born in America, but yeah,
he keeps it on the down low. Because it's funny because like, I mean, I used to work in the newspaper industry, but not in the way most people think. But I wasn't a journalist, before anyone wonders. And one of the things that used to come up a lot is like, he was one of the big original Eurosceptics. He was the one talking about bendy bananas back in the day and stuff like that. And he was also quite harsh on the whole special relationship when he was writing for the Times. Yeah, I think that's where he was writing for. Yeah, and I kind of forgot about it for a long time, and then just recently he was saying something about the Suez crisis, and I thought, hang on a minute, it's a bit odd. But I mean, it doesn't ultimately matter because he won't act on it or do anything about it. So
it's interesting that he was talking about the Suez crisis when the Americans totally shat on the Brits.
Yeah, I think it came up in relation to this stuff in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. He burns hot and cold. Like, I just remember a few years back watching that debate he had with I can't remember her name. the woman who the Rome woman who's got an unusual name. And they had a debate in the, I think it's the Baptist Hall, just next to Westminster. I've actually been in there. And they were talking about Greece versus Rome, and the whole thing just devolved into which was more liberal than the other. Which I don't know. Maybe there's an aspect to which he was just trying to appeal to this sort of crowd of London lovies, which they absolutely were. But no, I definitely think he's more on the liberal side.
That was the debate he did with that historian woman, wasn't it?
Mary Beard, yeah, Baron.
Mary Beard, yeah, that's right. I remember watching that on YouTube, and Boris got spanked in that, as I remember.
Well,
he was definitely the more liberal guy.
Yeah, but I thought he actually didn't do all that bad, considering he was literally debating an actual historian.
Yeah, no, I didn't think he did. No, I agree.
Boris Johnson does have a classics degree from Oxford University. He's not exactly.
Yeah. No, I listen. I'm a fan of ancient Rome myself, but I don't like Mary Beard very much because she's the modern liberal lefty historian type, in my opinion.
Yeah, even that I found kind of weird because there's a book by, I want to say the name's Heather Heyer.
It's not
that. No, it's something Heyer. Anyway, they wrote a book on the fall of Rome, and in it they cite they largely fall on an argument that that a lot of people on the right bring up, which is that it was largely like it was largely like extending Roman citizenship to all these various other groups that included like the Visigoths coming in and stuff like that, and that and for whatever reason, but then like Mary Beard was citing that book quite extensively to like people, which I thought was quite weird, like in a positive sense. So maybe she hasn't read it.
Well, I mean, look, the fact is that all people in the Roman Empire were granted Roman citizenship by Caracalla, who was not the greatest of Roman emperors, and he did it simply to raise more tax money. That's the only reason he did it. So, I don't know. I'm not, like I said, I quite like the ancient Roman Empire. I think it was certainly vital from the point of view of Western civilization, but it was also pretty vital if you're a Christian as well, because Christianity wouldn't have spread without the Roman Empire. I'm not a big fan of Mary Beard, to be honest, and that particular debate, which Johnson lost, although as Atman said, he didn't do badly in it at all. It was like they were both going for who was the most liberal, which to me was a ludicrous way to argue about ancient parts of the world. But
Yeah, I mean, Al brings up in the chat. He said it looks like Justin Trudeau is going to pull a Theresa May, and though the Conservatives won't win, as they've excommunicated true Conservatives who have formed an alternate party. Well, I mean, the thing is I mean, people have brought this up more recently, but I mean, the Conservatives do best when they stick it to candidates who actually rise up through the local ranks rather than helicoptering people in. But yet they still seem to be dedicated on the idea of helicoptering people in. I mean, what was the recent by-election they lost?
In Amersham?
No, the big one just before that. You covered it. You did a stream on it.
Oh, Bally and Spen.
Yeah. I mean, I could be completely wrong on this. Wasn't the issue there that the Conservative candidate they picked was just not that great?
They weren't on the ground campaigning, and I don't know. He was polling like way ahead, but then I think people just didn't turn up. So, I think if you look at polling at the moment for the Canadian election, I think the Conservatives, it looks quite likely they'll actually take it. I think they're 3 or 4 points ahead in the polls now. So, but I don't know how. I think the way their constituencies are, I don't know, apportioned in Canada leans towards the Liberals. So even if, but I think they're polling pretty decent. I don't think that the PPC are only polling, which is Maxime Bernier's party. They're only polling at like 3 or 4%. So I don't think that they're going to be a spoiler. Maybe they will, but
there's a great deal of like Ontario is the most important place in Canada easily because of the population. That is the issue that you're talking about there. With it favours the Liberals, and of course, Ontario has an enormous number of immigrants, for example.
Yeah. Well, I think I liked Andrew Scheer. I thought he was all right as a leader. I'm not enormously educated in Canadian politics, but Andrew Scheer seemed to be pretty consistently conservative from the perception that I got. I'm not totally sure about the new fellow they've got in. I think that the perception of him is that he's a little bit more liberal than Andrew Scheer was. I think if we're talking about modern leaders, I think the fellow who was the conservative leader with grey hair, I can't remember what his name is, but I think he had some policies that were fairly decent. I can't remember what his name is now. It'll come to me in a minute. I'll have to Google it. Anyway, conservative Canadian Prime Minister. Someone say it in the chat. Someone probably knows. Canadian.
I do look from my point of view when I look at the Canadian
Stephen Harper. That's the one. Sorry,
Stephen Harper. Yeah, okay. Someone in the chat is also saying Mulrooney. I'm no expert on Canadian politics. I would just say that what I do see from looking at it occasionally as an outsider is that the Conservative Party in Canada seems to be doing pretty much what the Conservative Party in the UK has been doing and what the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative Party in Australia, has been doing, and simply going more to the left on many social issues, which I just think is a total mistake. But
I'm not sure that whole. I wouldn't say the Johnson government was more to the left than the Cameron or perhaps even Michael Howard. So I'm not sure if that's wholly true. I think what one thing that the Conservative Party in Canada is not doing, which the British Conservative Party is doing, is winning elections. They can't seem to do that. But I'm not sure about the Liberal Party in Australia. But I think the right are very good at winning elections, but they're not very good at winning culture. They're extremely poor at it seems. But about the only victory I can think of that the right has had in terms of culture has been, I suppose, SJW has entered like mainstream parlance, and you could argue perhaps like socialist economic policies can like just off the table. I think that's probably the only two victories for the right I can even think of. But
I can't think of very many, I have to say. There was a question someone wanted to ask further up here. Here we go. Tom GB, thoughts on the Heritage Party leader, my former UKIP member, David Curtin. It's got a decent manifesto and it's socially conservative, but it doesn't seem to have gone anywhere, unfortunately. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I think I'm sorry, Asman, do you want to go? If you want to go first, you did sort of start.
Oh well, I was just going to say I do quite like David Curtin, but I'm not sure that party's really going anywhere. I hope it does. I kind of feel that he's probably spent a bit too much time talking about lockdowns, but anyway.
Yeah. Again, I think I've said before, it's difficult to say how that issue will age. I'm on the side of I think any further lockdown restrictions would be thoroughly unwanted, and you can see in Australia at the moment complete tyranny, basically, and New Zealand as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about that later on in the stream, but
it's dreadful. Some of it's really dreadful. Anyway, where was I? Curtin. Yeah, I think someone said he's a one-man band. I think, again, they did do well in Hartlepool. You have to remember they had a solid result in Hartlepool. They beat the Lib Dems and the Greens and a few other people. But they did badly. They did bad in Batley. Just don't seem to have any kind of national reach. They don't get like Heritage Party members on Question Time and things like that. Like you had, Farage on every other week because, people wanted to see Farage. Curtin's not a Nigel Farage. I think if any further scrutiny was placed on Curtin, I think there's things that they could dig up. For example, him sharing a stage with David Icke repeatedly, clapping at things about killing NHS nurses.
Whoa! Let's not do the left's work for them, please.
Well, okay, I'm not doing left's works for them, but I mean, I think if scrutiny was put under Curtin to the level it was put under for people like Farage, you know, they could say, well, you've shared a platform with this person and you've said this at an anti-lockdown protest, or you've said that you think COVID's fake, or you said, you know, like he's open in a way that Farage isn't. The thing is, what they did with Farage was just say, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist, which he just said no, and it was very clear he wasn't personally, you know, like he had like an Indian like youth party leader. He had like, you know, people running all over the party. So it was very, very easy to discredit that. But when you have people saying, "Oh, you shared a stage with David Icke," like that's a bit more. And plus, he doesn't have the. I think one thing that Farage did that, you know, you can bring back to, you know, if you think back to, perhaps in many ways considered perhaps wrongly to be the precursor to UKIP, the British National Party. You know, Farage was able to differentiate himself from like a certain brand of sort of unsavory kind of politics that Griffin wasn't able to do, and that's why Griffin never broke 10% nationally, whilst Farage, you know, was consistently getting 35-36% in polls and things like that.
Yeah, but Farage, but Farage, to be fair, I agree with most of what you say there, Roy. But I mean, Farage has also carefully backed away from some more, shall we say, controversial issues, which I think in some respects was a mistake, because he was popular enough that he could have actually spoken out a bit more than he really did, in my
Okay, so if you'd have to say like specifically what you mean. Do you mean in terms of demographics or in terms of?
Yeah, in terms of demographics and mass immigration, I think Farage is like, I mean, Farage will go on and on and on, for example, about illegal immigration, and yes, that's a big deal, and Britain's paying millions and millions of pounds to the French, who are doing nothing but encourage it, which should just be cut off. That money, there's no point in spending that money. We might as well get a couple more ships or something for it. But he will not talk about the legal mass immigration, which is actually a much bigger issue.
I've heard people claim this before. I don't think it's
hang on, Roy.
I think me and Oak are actually going to make the same point here. I kind of think this has kind of been put to bed. I mean, Farage has been talking a lot about illegal immigration again, the boats, and yet immigration is now one of the top concerns amongst Tory party voters. So it has a sort of an umbrella effect across all aspects of immigration. You know, everyone knew when he was largely talking about illegal immigration in the past. By the time that got diluted down, it was just immigration. It was just talking about immigration. I mean, everyone knew it.
Well, even beyond that, even if like, you know, you can bring up the breaking point posters that you know cause so much outrage in the liberal media. the whole thing, you know, if you think back to the EU referendum, he was saying 200 million, what was it? 200 million Romanians or Bulgarians could come here legally tomorrow, which is, you know, he's not talking about illegal immigration. He's talking about Romanians or Bulgarians coming here legally.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know where it's come from. I don't know which Nigel Farage people have been listening to when they say that. I'm not talking about you specifically, Duke. I've heard other people say this as well, but I'm not sure which Nigel Farage they're talking about that hasn't spoke about legal migration. Because I think he has done repeatedly. But
my view on Farage is he's the only guy who could run a populist party in the UK with any chance of success, but he doesn't seem to want to do it.
Yeah, well, I think
it's also an aspect of resources and money, though, isn't it? I think that before this GB News gig, I think he was probably quite close to being broke in a sort of a logistical party starting standpoint.
I think he still probably would have backers, more than anyone else that I can think of.
But why do you guys think he walked away from UKIP, for example? I mean, all right, I know that the National Executive Committee of UKIP was vile, but was that the only reason he did it? And was it sensible?
Well, I think Nigel Farage, I don't think ever really. Well, it's difficult to say what his intentions are. He claims he never wanted to be involved in politics. I think to an extent I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing. I think he does have a bit of he kind of has a bit of an ego side. I'm not saying that's necessarily a negative thing. I think it's actually can in some cases be a positive thing. I don't wholly believe that he never wanted to get involved in politics, but I can understand after like 25 years, how many years he did of constant campaigning with like no breaks. He obviously had the plane crash. I don't think he's always been a very well man after the plane crash. That was in, I think, 2007. I think it was.
Yeah, he nearly died, didn't he?
Yeah. I think I'm not sure he's been a particularly well man since then. I think he says things to back that up. I think he just had enough and he felt job done, which he wasn't. If you thought that, it was naive to think that. But
Adam, you got anything to add to that?
I kind of believe this is completely just speculation. I kind of believe that he sees the path to victory is in many singular units. So he kind of saw UKIP's job as getting Brexit, and then he's going to move on to hitting it from another angle, and so on and so forth.
Maybe, yeah.
And I know that a lot of people get burnt that way, and a lot of people kind of don't like it, but I think there's quite a bit of success in that. Just having a group that just says we're just this, gets that done, throws in the towel, and then the energy within that slightly dissipates, but also largely gets put into something else.
Yeah, I think we're yet to see the effectiveness of Farage on GB News, but the opposition that I watch Prime Minister's Question Time sometimes on a Wednesday, in the evenings after work and things like that. And the opposition that Farage gives to Boris Johnson on his TV.
Hang on, Rollo. If you're doing that, you need a girlfriend.
Well, okay, I'm a politics student. I've got an excuse. I don't always watch it.
I'm sorry, I was just joking.
I'm a politics student, all right? Okay,
I was just joking.
I'm allowed.
I was joking.
I don't always, but so sometimes I do, and or watch highlights of it, and you can see like I think Starmer can't really provide any opposition to him. I think for Farage, his opposition to the Conservatives has in effect been more effective. Well, not necessarily effective. It's better, but I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I think there's been some debate as to the numbers that GB News are getting. There's some numbers that say they're not doing very well, and there's some numbers that say they're blowing all these other news channels out of the water. But yeah.
Yeah, I was adamant. I was going to ask actually, what how do you think GB News is going?
Well, yeah, it is hard to say. Like some of the numbers you'll see where people quote that they get more views or they get close to the same views as, let's say, BBC News, but they're looking at the BBC News channel at a time when everyone's just watching the BBC News on BBC 1 and 2. So it is, and there are a lot of issues like that, but they do seem to be sort of hanging it in there, or his show seems to be hanging it in there, sort of in or around Sky News territory. So at least some of the weeks, and that's pretty good for a show that's still very much in its infancy. I mean, it could use a lot of work. I mean, there's aspects of it that I think really need to be ramped up. I'd like his interviews to be a little bit longer. I think the sets could do with a bit of a rework. I think sometimes it's got a little bit too much of a sort of a dare I say boomer aesthetic to it that I think could be upgraded slightly. But
I've never watched GB News, by the way. I'll have to go and watch some of it at some point. But I mean, you're talking about an internet news basically, rather than a TV news.
Well, it's on the TV. So there's it's like Sky Channel. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, okay. So is it on Sky? Is it? Okay.
It's on Freeview, Virgin, Man, Sky, I think.
I mean, look, I'm the exception to the rule perhaps these days. In that, I've got a TV set which is behind my sofa that has not been switched on in about 3.5 years, because I used to watch cricket on it, and I don't even watch that anymore. So I just don't watch TV. So what's going on mainstream media TV, I only get from people like yourselves telling me, or stuff that I see on the internet, because I just don't watch it. I think you've just got to switch off from it.
Yeah, definitely. Mitch in chat said average Farage videos on GB News on YouTube get at least 60, 70 or even 80k views. I had a bit of a trawl through their YouTube channel actually, looking at videos, and the clips with Farage in the thumbnail or the title get enormously more views than all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, even I'll admit, like, if I'm working at work, if I'm at work on the late shifts, I'll tune in on my phone and have a listen. And I mean, I did even actually switch it on specifically the other day because he had Peter Hitchens on there. So
not for long enough though. He needed to have Hitchens for
no.
longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long was the interview?
It's only like 10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, no,
it seemed
needs
like barely 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have Farage and Hitchens, that needs to be an hour for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
absolutely.
all we kind of established is that Hitchens and Farage disagree on everything. That's literally all anyone got out of that interview.
Which I'd be surprised if that was really true, to be honest.
I don't know. Like, I've probably spent this stream praising Farage, but I think he has some quite liberal views on some things. To be honest,
Yeah.
Especially, I think particularly on. I think Hitchens caught him out a bit on drug policy.
Yes.
I agree. I will say I agree. I think Peter Hitchens has a sort of elitist view a lot of the time. I think he refused to shake someone's hand after a debate, which I think was un-British to say the least. One way I'd describe it. Refusing to shake hands after a debate, I think, and I think he has a sort of sneering attitude sometimes. I do like Peter Hitchens, but I prefer Farage's more sort of populist vision to Hitchens' elitist vision. But
what's your view, Arman, on Farage versus Hitchens?
I like Hitchens. I do like Hitchens a lot. I do wish that debate had just been longer, like interview, but harsh discussion. I would have liked to have seen Hitchens have more time to sort of go to town on the drug stuff. Yeah, it's hard to gauge because it was so short. I think there was a lot of nuance there that could have been really fleshed out that would have been really interesting to hear. Like because Hitchens and Farage even like kind of went at it over the Brexit stuff, because of course Hitchens thinks that Brexit, or what's this word, and he thinks that Brexit has been done to save the Tory party.
Probably some truth in that.
Yeah. And he thinks that he's kind of, I think he was kind of alluded to the fact that Nigel Farage has given this victory to the Tories when he probably shouldn't have.
People forget, and I think I tweeted this, and then he quote tweeted. Oh, anyway, that was ages ago, wasn't it? But yeah, I think you did see this, didn't you, Aslan?
Yes.
Yeah, I said, because I read somewhere, I can't remember where, that I think Hitchens told people to vote for UKIP but didn't vote for UKIP himself, basically. So like, I think he basically said, I think he wanted UKIP to do well, basically, because I think he thought it would be like a thorn in the side of the Conservatives. So it's a bit ironic for him now to go and say, oh well, we left the EU and now we're going to get owned by China. It's like, you partially caused it, and you wrote for the Mail on Sunday.
Look on Hitchens. I was actually looking at something about that today. I don't know, maybe it was someone put it in the Discord or something, but where Hitchens said that UK should have had a free trade deal with Europe or the EU, but we're actually going under the Chinese, which is absolute nonsense, because the British Carrier Strike Group is currently in the South China Sea doing stuff with the US Navy and the Japanese and the Royal Australian Navy. We're certainly not on the side of the Chinese, trust me, because the Chinese have done nothing but slag off Britain for sending that fleet out there since it was sent. And they're still doing the same thing.
Yeah, but there's a difference between like where the power is seated when it comes to visible attacks on the Chinese versus the sort of subversion through the market and the culture by Chinese goods and Chinese institutions.
Well, one of the very few things that I agreed with the current Conservative, in inverted commas, government doing was that they got rid of that Huawei thing, didn't they?
Huawei, yeah.
Yeah, they did stop that, didn't they, Arman?
I think they did.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's totally true. And if you're going to talk about globo homo, the EU is at least as globo homo as the Chinese Communist Party, probably more actually in most respects. Like I like Hitchens. I agree with both of you chaps, particularly what Atman said. Mostly, I do agree with Hitchens, but he's very black-pilled. I mean, his advice to all young British people is leave, which is kind of like impractical apart from anything else. And leave to where is the other question.
Yeah, sure, but the thing is he is, after all, an investigative journalist. I mean, he's the critique. He's not the critic. Sorry, not the leader. So.
Well, ironically, he tried to get UKIP into power. So, I mean,
yeah,
well, not into power. He tried to get them anyway. But
well, I mean, where Hitchens is obviously right is that if the right wants to do anything in Britain, you've got to get rid of the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is not a right-wing party.
Well, the Conservative Party are very good at winning elections. That's one thing they're very, very good at.
Yeah, but they're not a right-wing party, are they, Warlock?
No, at the moment they're not a right-wing party, no. But I think what the Conservative Party is good at doing is adapting to the feeling in the nation. So, for example, I think I've brought up before, they were the party that got Britain into the empire and the party that got them out of it. They're a party that got them into the EU and got the UK out of the EU eventually, or mostly at least. And I think as well, there's another thing. They were opposed to the Great Reform Bill and then rewrote it, and then they were the ones who put it through. So I think one thing they're good at doing is adapting to national feeling. I think if there was a conservative swing back, like in terms of culture, then I think they would just have to play ball. And there's several ways that could happen. I think people have brought up, if the Heritage Party suddenly started getting, started polling at 17% or something over culture war issues, then the Conservatives would be forced to shift on that, or they start losing, and that's the number one thing that they're good at doing is shifting on opinions so they don't lose. And to be fair, they have been very effective at getting elected. I think out of their leaders in the past 100 and I think since the beginning of the 20th century, the only ones that didn't get elected were two under Blair, and I think there was one other. So I think the only ones that didn't get elected were Michael Howard, Duncan Smith, and I think there was one in like the 1900s or something,
And you could kind of say that Michael Howard and Duncan Smith were almost the only two possibly true conservatives amongst them.
Well, yeah, I think you were talking about you were talking about whether or not the UK state has sided with China. Ian Duncan Smith, I think there's two other people in the cabinet as well who've actually been sanctioned by the Chinese government. The problem is though that they shift and then leave it in the dirt. But the thing is, what I'd say more than you need to destroy the Conservative Party, which I think it would be a good thing if they were destroyed, but I don't think it will realistically happen, is to say don't trust the Conservative Party and just try and influence it as a national machine. I think basically at this point, it looks to me like the Labour Party can't get elected within the next 20 years unless there's a massive shift in something. So basically, you're in the position that they were in Singapore, essentially, because Singapore's had a single party in government for a very, very long time. But that's
an actual right wing party.
Well, it's a broad tent party that has some right wing.
The right has to be broad tent because we have our religious people, we have our reactionaries like myself. It has to be a broad tent party, right? It does. But the conservative, the guys who run Singapore are a genuinely right of centre party.
Okay, I think again it's a broad tent party,
and socially as they're socially right wing as well as in economics.
I think the PAP is quite a broad party. I think the only people that oppose them are like the far left or like the left wing socialists. So like there's like liberals and stuff in the party. So
if you spit on the street in Singapore, you can get arrested.
Yeah, it's a specific. I mean, in terms of like historical leaders, I think Lee Kuan, whatever his name is, I've read about him before. He's probably up there with some of the greats. But despite the fact he did sort of shill for the CPC for a bit, but I think in terms of that party, they're influenced by even if the broad majority of members of the, or representatives or people that vote for the party aren't conservatives, they've been influenced very well by sort of conservative action groups. You could even say like Christians within Singapore, or perhaps the Malay Muslims pushing them to the right on some issues, or again, you've brought up stuff like the chewing gum thing. Singapore, in many ways, although of course it is a multiracial democracy, has it has a very thriving economy. It has decent levels of community cohesion. It has sort of national identity going on. It's a healthy society in essence. But yeah, it's kind of going on.
Adam, you got anything on Singapore?
No. Doesn't it rank quite high for religiosity? So
I believe so.
Yes,
I believe it does.
So wouldn't social conservative values be quite desirable in their politics anyway?
I'll have to check that. I think that I think the majority of people in Singapore are Chinese who tend to not be religious.
Right.
But
right.
I'll have to check that.
They do, but the Chinese religion is kind of like ancestor worship and this kind of stuff, which we in the West we don't quite get. Although I think, in some ways, I think ancestor worship is quite a base thing to have. But there we go.
2010 census shows that 33% of Singaporeans are Buddhist, 18.1% are Christian, with 7% being Catholic, 14.3% are Muslim, 11% are Taoist, 5% are Hindu. God, it's an absolute mixture, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's the.
But this is my point. You see, I think a right-wing party has to be fairly broad tent. It does.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm one of these. One of my criticisms of the right, in inverted commas, is that we purity spiral all the time. And we can't do that because we won't win if we do that. But on the other hand, I don't know if you guys watched that AA stream earlier this week, where he was talking about you've got to include trannies and gays and all the rest of it. And I'm not so sure about that up to a point. I don't know what you guys think about that. Adam, what do you think about
that? I quite like. Was it EP? He calls himself Evelyn now.
Yeah. The Scottish bloke.
I do think he's all right. Other than that, I think if you want to win, you can't be openly hostile to these people, but that doesn't mean that you have to be inclusive either.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think also. Rollo, your opinion on that?
That Evelyn person, I'm talking about Twitter again. I spend way too much time on Twitter. Anyway. that person, I think I put up something. I think she said she said that in order we need to create new traditions by destroying the current ones, which is a position I totally don't agree with. But I don't know. I think. Yeah, I don't know. I think those people basically want to form a new think. Everything in our society is so unbelievably paused. We need to burn everything down and just try and start anew. Which it's a position I can understand, but it's a position that I don't agree with. For several reasons that I think that as a conservative, you have to. I think there's a key phrase: England cannot be made again. You know what I mean? You can't just restart.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my view,
that's probably why it's on unpop opinions, though. To be fair.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's called unpopular opinions for a reason, I suppose.
Yeah, but I listen. There's 2 points I would make. I mean, first of all, I think AA is a bit of a hypocrite because he comes out with this anime to trans pipeline shit, which I don't know. Maybe I dare say if he was really pinned on it, he'd call it a joke, like he did when he was supporting Trump to do all sorts of things which Trump didn't do, and couldn't do. But I also think that I think if gay people are gay and it's not the main thing about them and they don't go on about it all the time and they don't have gay pride parades, then I can put up with that.
Yeah, but this is how it all starts, isn't it?
yeah, no, you're right, Adam, you're absolutely right. But on the other hand, as you rightly say, if we come out totally against that stuff, we're going to have a lot of more social liberal types who in other ways agree with us, saying, oh no, we can't support them because they're bloody Nazis. You know what I mean?
If you started a real life forum, that does meetups and dinners and talks and
Yes,
stuff like that,
yes.
and Millennial Rose wasn't a sex pest, would you let him in?
If he wasn't, yes, absolutely. I'm actually not sure that he ever was either. By the way,
Sure, but
I think he got taken for a mug by a girl, which happens a lot to blokes. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to most of us. Men are men after all. But I just think we're in a very awkward position in this sense. We shouldn't support it. Certainly, we can't, because it's not traditional. It's not what people did. But obviously, there's always been gay people, and my view is that, like, if someone is gay and they don't make a big fuss about it, and they do it in private, that's their business.
Well, I don't know. Like, I can see from a sort of US perspective, and if you want to go for a rather, I don't know, kind of Machiavellian kind of thing.
Try giving a UK perspective, not a US perspective. This is a UK and old Commonwealth channel, man.
If it would help the aims of conservatism or right wing people to have a tranny cheerleader, then I don't want to say go ahead, but I think it could in some cases be a positive thing.
Lady Maga.
Maybe not Lady Maga, but
you see, I think you've got to look at the slippery slope arguments. Yeah. At first, we were told, okay, so you're going to make gay sex legal. Fair enough. Got no problem with that, really, to be honest. I don't want to send people to jail for stuff they do in private. Then you're going to make trannies a big deal. Then you're going to allow trannies into women's toilets and bathrooms, and you're going to send trannies to women's prisons, and we've seen the results of some of that, of like assaults and this kind of stuff. This is happening. It does happen. Just because someone calls themselves a girl doesn't make them a girl. And then we see disgusting and ludicrous nonsense, like some 38-year-old bloke claiming to be a little girl and shit like that. We see 7-year-old little boys who have been, we've lost Adam, and hopefully he'll come back. There you go, he's back. Then we see like 7-year-old little boys, due to the propaganda of their vile mothers and weak fathers, doing strip shows in gay nightclubs. And then we get transvestite story hour and women, and it's always women, surprisingly enough, who want to turn their 5-year-old son into a girl. And all of this stuff gets accepted. It's just ridiculous. Like, there has to be a point where we say, no, this is not allowed.
Okay.
This is pure child abuse.
I'd argue in a lot of ways there is already some level of at least on a cultural level, a level of opposition to that as it is. I don't think you can turn your 5-year-old into at least where I'm from, I don't think you could do it. I don't think you could turn your 5-year-old into a different gender whilst not, raising perhaps some red flags. I wouldn't go as far as to say.
But I don't know. Some of these, and they're nearly always mothers, seem to get away with it.
Well, you'd have to bring up individual examples. I can't think of any example that I know of someone. I don't even know if I know anyone who's actually transitioned, to be honest. There was one person who was, I think, who's a cousin of one of my friends who ended up, I did for a bit and then went back. But...
Royal Oak, I'll point you out to Ozzy's comment from the chat, and then you get a woman who just wants to lop off her son's balls and gets awarded full custody.
You'd have to bring up specific examples. I think I don't think it would be necessarily not frowned upon by the powers that be if you lopped the balls off your 5-year-old.
Well, I can think of one case in Texas in America for sure, where that is almost what's going on at the moment.
You'd have to show me the specific example. I'm not denying that it's the case in anecdotal cases, but I don't think in a broad sense it's societally acceptable to get your 5-year-old to transition, like fully at least.
You hear a lot of stories about it, mate, on the news. If you look around the news, you hear quite a lot of stories about it.
Not as it well. Okay, we want to say like young kids that should not be doing that, but I wouldn't go as far as saying 5. Like they're lopping balls off at 5.
Adam, what do you think about that stuff, mate?
I don't know. I'm kind of not sure. I think you two are talking past each other. Like, are you saying that because it's not like popular amongst the mass populace that it's therefore kept underground by that alone?
No, I think it's. I don't think on a societal level it's acceptable to. I don't think on a societal level Desmond the Amazing or Cuties is societally acceptable. I think there was massive backlash against Cuties. There was massive backlash against trans 5-year-olds. I think most people would be opposed to it, and I think even on a level of like courts and shit, I think you can bring up individual examples of courts going the opposite way. News is fake. I mean, I don't know, whatever. Anyone could publish news, though. It's not really like a high barrier to entry. It's not like the CIA go around putting guns to people's heads, is it?
But Royal, well, yeah, I think
they do sometimes, but in individual cases.
I think they do.
But I mean,
I think Sano's Hamar makes a good point here that like they are trying to make it look like it is popular.
That's probably true. I think again, you have to remember that like certain publications have a certain agenda that you should keep in mind. In terms of is trans story hour, is Desmond the Amazing, is lopping your 5-year-old kid's balls off socially, legally, or in any other way acceptable in our society? I wouldn't go as far as to say it was currently accepted. But anyway, I don't know. Probably the slippery slope means it probably will at some point.
Did any of you see Transhood on HBO? This is an American series, by the way.
No, I haven't seen
that. They watched a lot of young, very young people, like kids, on there getting sort of hormone blocker treatments and stuff like that. And it was kind of interesting because, well, in a very, very dark way, because they had lots of where it was clearly something that the parents were more pushing for than the kids. They had the kids were sometimes the kids were clearly not liking it, and the parents were kind of sort of encouraging them to go along with it. And I don't know. I sometimes wonder if there's a bit of a ticking time bomb where the ground is being laid for this. Like, we definitely see a lot less of this in the UK than they do in America, but. You get this issue where, for example, like I've got a great aunt, right, who always wanted a daughter and just had sons, and she literally dressed them up as girls growing up, and it's been quite rough on the family because the boys just don't talk to their mum anymore. They don't have anything to do with them. The whole family's sort of fractured over it. But you sort of see a lot of this, like back in the day they'd say like this guy is pushing his son to get into golf because he never did it. There's a name for this sort of thing. I can't remember what it is, but you're starting to see some of that cropping up in like America and Canada, depending on the state. And I don't know. I do see it being a big issue when it sort of comes over here in a more wholesale trim.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, look, the thing I would say is like, why do we accept things like transvestite story hour and teaching very small children who are way below the age of puberty about sex?
I would say that
it's completely immoral. It's immoral to teach children way below the age of puberty about sex, and has no good purpose. It only has evil purposes, in my humble opinion, anyway.
I mean, I would say that sort of promiscuous pedo story hour sort of stuff is largely existing within the sort of places where the parents probably root for that stuff more than shame it. You know, the sort of places where schools have large governorships run largely by leftist busybodies.
Yeah, because they're the people who can be bothered to go to that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and there'll be a few parents that are kind of stuck in the area that can't get out and stuff like that.
Yeah, I look, to me, all of this.
It's the weekly appearance of Cheekstock. Skirting the Edge has a trans brother-in-law. He transitioned into a girl. He's 6'4", barefoot, 6'10" in heels. I was just thinking, Ozzy made a comment. What was he saying? Thoughts on the porn star who's a conservative commentator? No, thanks. Because there was a big thing about them getting. Did they get kicked out of CPAC? I seem to remember.
Yeah, something like that.
That was good of CPAC. Finally did something good. Well done.
Was that the internet whore girl woman? Yeah. I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good name.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that stuff is far less dangerous than all this stuff around children. To be honest, that's what I think.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to have a woman who had an abortion but now speaks out against abortions. You know, that's a very powerful thing to have in your movement. Or even a porn star, a former porn star who now talks about the issues of the pornography industry. But like to have someone who's like currently still a porn star or a cam girl or whatever within the movement, a bit out there, a bit too much.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. I think there's actually another example. I think there's I think she's Asian. It's not the famous one. There's another conservative sort of like influencer person who also, I think she doesn't do like full on like sex scenes, but she does like like lewd pictures or whatever. I seem to remember there was a story a while back. It's a question again, like, would you say that like Alice Grant should be banned from the conservative movement because she's got bikini pictures on her Instagram?
No,
like, it's a question of where you draw the line, isn't it? Obviously, I think porn stars like it is a clear thing, but maybe like someone that posts perhaps like bikini pictures and sells like clothes or something. I don't know. It's a question of where you draw the line, isn't it?
Hang on, I'm not white Sharia at all. So if some chick's got bikini pictures, providing she's cute, fair enough. I don't care. All I'd say is if she's got bikini pictures, she has to be cute. But that's not porn. Like not at all, in my opinion. So
do you have the same rule for immigration?
What's that?
Only cute women are allowed visas.
I might. Listen, there are one or two Japanese girls I might allow. There we go.
Oh no! Was this in one of their animes again? You've been watching?
Yeah, it wasn't. No. I don't watch anime actually. I really don't watch anime. Hang on, Ozzy sent me a link that I'm going to put up. Wait a minute. Here we go. Because I should make Ozzy a spanner, but I can't without interrupting the stream anyway. So here's a link that Ozzy wanted me to put up, which you guys will have to look at.
I don't know. I think governments in the past have had policies where they like check your physical fitness and things like that. So I suppose that would be like a comparison to a Fitbirds immigration policy.
Yeah, but I'd still draw the line at like South Asia and Africa, to be honest. But,
you draw the line at Africa.
Africa and South Asia, yes, I would. But honestly, that's not really true.
We don't endorse the Fitbirds immigration policy.
I am against all mass immigration to UK. Mass
even
immigration.
If they're fit.
Yeah, even if they're fit. Mass immigration, I'm against. Okay, here we go. For guys in the chat and also for Adam and Royal Oak, here is Ozzy's link that you can go and check out.
We'll take the centrist position and say you can also have a fit guy's immigration policy. There you go.
Oh, for fuck's sake, no. No.
Well, it's all about equality here on the Splendid Isolation.
I'm not in favour of equality. I never have been.
All right. What's this link? Let's have a link.
It's
So,
on.
a story about a court awarding full custody to James Younger's mother
Okay.
in Texas.
I think this is the one I mentioned for in Texas, and Texas, of course, is one of the most right-wing states in America.
Well, not really. It's one of the last big right-wing states in America, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's far from one of the most.
Well, it's one of the last big right-wing states in America, and it's far more right-wing than the UK, for example. But anyway, I mean, for a start, you can walk around openly with a firearm in Texas, which you sure can't do in UK.
Okay.
Just having a look through this.
Well, again, it's one example. It's not really indicative of a wider trend. But court awards full custody, but mother requires permission for a parental office.
I'd just like to say good evening to Lady of Shalott, who is a lady originally, I think, from Northern Ireland, who these days lives in Australia, and who is a nice lady.
Oh shit! What was I going to say? I was just reading through this article, and I thought something's completely gone now.
No, it's all right, mate. You take your time. We don't have a time limit here. We'll stop when we've done enough.
John McNamara can't believe you're cucking on white Sharia. At this rate, he's going to have to move to an Islamic country.
Well, sorry, John McNamara. I'm not a supporter of white Sharia. Never have been. I kind of like girls in short skirts if they've got decent legs. So,
I don't know. Islam bad, mate. Islam's just bad. Sorry, it just is.
Yeah, it was never that Islam was right about women. It was always that Christianity was right about sex.
Yeah. What is it? We should take the Thomas Aquinas perspective on sex. I think.
I could certainly more support what Adam said there. Like the Christianity was right on sex, but Islam was never right on anything really. I mean, leaving aside the fact that Muhammad was a pedophile, of course, but there we go.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. There was this whole thing recently with people saying that, like, some Republicans are like saying they don't mind the Taliban and things like that. But I don't know. The Taliban aren't your friends, guys. I'm sorry,
No.
like, they're just not. It's just the facts. I mean, like they killed people for having a Bible apps on their phone and shit. Like, these guys are not your friends. Okay. I mean, to be fair, like, I don't know. I think an intervention in Afghanistan has made the situation generally worse. I don't think we'd have the Taliban if there wasn't an intervention in Afghanistan. Obviously, it was the Soviet. Yeah,
the Taliban. No, hang on.
This actually, but
yeah, all right. But the Taliban were running Afghanistan before the intervention, and they're running it now, which just meant 20 years and thousands of.
It's a misconception.
Western lives later, we did nothing whatsoever.
Yeah, so people often say that the US intervened to help the Taliban. That's not true. The Mujahideen were a broad tent of which the Taliban, I think, was one of 6 groups. There was groups in the Mujahideen that then went on to oppose the Taliban. Some of the groups within the Mujahideen went on to be the Afghan government. I think the majority Tajik group, I can't remember what they're called. Things like Islamic Justice Party.
But Royal Oak, if you're going to run Afghanistan, you have to be a Pushtun. If you're not a Pushtun, you can't run Afghanistan.
Well, they had Tajik presidents in the past, but
they didn't last. They never lasted very long.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I think, to be honest, like any further intervention in Afghanistan would just lead to more misery. I think what looks quite likely now, after the horrific bombing that took place a few days ago, I think, from ISIS, is that perhaps the Taliban will go to war with ISIS, and then perhaps they'll have a bit of common ground with the rest of the world in terms of fighting ISIS, and that will force them to moderate on some things. I think it's wrong to say that. Well, yeah, I think that's true. You have to remember as well that international organizations have a lot of money sat over that, you could say, sort of over the heads of the Taliban, right? That's meant for Afghanistan. And I think the Taliban are trying to appease the West to an extent to try and get that money. get that bag, if you will. So
I just think the sooner we're out of that show and with the less Afghans, the better. That's my entire opinion on it.
Suno Samar is right. Let the mountain people have their mountains.
Absolutely right.
And if the Taliban like last time banned the selling of banned the selling of opium poppies, I think they're called, like they did last time, that'd be a very, very positive thing.
If they do that,
about doing that, aren't they?
Yeah, and didn't they also ban the practice? The Taliban, didn't they also ban the practice of Afghan warlords getting hold of very young boys and men? And,
questionable.
Yeah, Bakabardis.
Bit questionable.
Yeah.
They did dabble in a bit of that themselves.
I'm sure some of them did because it's very traditional in Afghanistan. But
yeah,
in general, they were against that.
Well, look, I don't like the Taliban because they killed British servicemen, thousands of them, and Australian servicemen and Canadian servicemen and American servicemen.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm not at all fans of these guys. They have a view of the world that I don't agree with, which is obviously the Islamic worldview.
They are not our friends.
No.
In that, you're totally right. And I think that some of what's been happening over the last few weeks is that the right, and by that I mean the right that's to the right of the mainstream so-called conservatives, is so desperate for any sort of victory that they've been adopting the Taliban. But no, the Taliban are not our friends. Obviously, they're not.
Well, I think it's a minority of people that said they like the Taliban. But anyway, sorry.
Hang on, Adam, carry on, mate.
Well,
sorry,
yeah, I mean, Oak's right, but I mean, I would also say that we have this problem on the right now where people they sort of take the friend enemy distinction and they sort of take it in the wrong direction, and they very much go with that old phrase of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they sort of work through the optics of our current opposition, and they go, oh, what's against global homo? Oh, the Taliban, base Taliban, but yeah, it is still a reasonable minority rather than a majority.
There's been, I think there was someone in particular who paid some attention to the fact that Gab banned the Taliban from their app. I'm not even sure if the Taliban had an account on Gab, but they're banned from Gab. And people are like, well, isn't this really hypocritical? It's like, I don't know. But,
actually, you bring up Gab, and I've been on Gab for many years. I don't use it much except for occasionally to put up an advance notice on one of these streams. But because I've been on Gab for ages, I got a email from the Torber, the guy who runs it, and the American Congress are now trying to make him give all the names of people on Gab to them because of what happened on 6th of January.
Forever in our memories.
Yeah, forever in our memories. When the American police invited the guys to go into the building, shot dead an unarmed woman.
No, it was an enormous insurrection. We basically almost took over the government. Look, if they're going to make it sound as cool as that, I think we should bloody well own it.
Yeah. I wish in some ways I wish it had been, but I mean, what actually happened was, and you can find videos and watch it. The American police invited people in there, and then some black American policeman, and he was a black guy, shot to death an ex-American Air Force woman who was completely unarmed, and he's recently been like completely nothing whatsoever. What you did was entirely justified because this woman was a real threat to you.
He came out and said that he saved lives by doing that as well.
Yeah, because that woman was going to kill people. That ex-American Air Force woman, she was going to kill people with no weapons whatsoever. And I guarantee you guys that I'm 56 years old, and I guarantee you I can beat up 97 or 98% of the women in the world if I was that much of an arsehole. But there you go.
So before it goes too far up
She
the
wasn't Air
chat,
Force, but I mean, maybe you could.
before it goes too far up the chat,
Just makes her
Skirting
more
the
gay.
Edge said, "Iron Duke, educate us on the Great Game and why Afghanistan was and will always be important." We talked about the Great Game on it before, I think.
Yeah, and I replied to him in the chat saying that it's India's problem now, which it is.
Yeah, but Afghanistan is strategically very important.
But only if you're where the British Empire was in the 19th century, and Afghanistan is the thing that divides you from Russia. Yeah. So now it's India's problem. It's not ours.
Well, I mean, it's full of lithium.
Well, China might. Yeah, it supposedly is. But, you know, if you go, people are saying China's going to go in there now. Well, good luck to them. If China goes into there now, China will end up in the same position that the West was in and Russia before us was in, or the Soviets, I should say, where you're going to be paying loads of money to bandits not to attack your routes of where you're going to be moving stuff, or your pipelines, or whatever it is you're going to put in there. They're not going to always do that. They're going to kidnap people, and you're going to be faced with that. Now, okay, China will be much more ruthless than the West was, and actually probably more ruthless than even the Soviets were. And it will absolutely wipe out whole villages, but it will still have the same problem.
Yeah.
There's a name for this in the Austrian school, I think, of I can't remember. I cannot remember shit tonight. But yeah, there's a name to describe like the idea that a country can sit either on a mass of resources or on a crossroads between powers, and that just means that the country stays forever a bit of a shithole.
John McNamara says Iron Duke respects women. I don't really, to be honest with you. I have a fairly low opinion of most women. There are good women. There are good women, but generally they'll go with who's ever winning, and that's my real opinion on women. If you want it.
What was it you said in the Discord that time? My view of most women is xvideos.com/Asian slut gets. I can't remember. I don't really remember.
I don't even. You don't even need to go to what I said on there. I've said it many times. Like, women will mostly do what most men want to do. That's what women will mostly do. There are good women, don't get me wrong. There are women like Lady of Shalott and my late Australian woman who
but she's creasing at the moment. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Who I beg your pardon. There are many good women, but like women as a sex will do what most men want to do. They just will. And no, I don't respect most of them really, because, and that's why I've never supported women voting, because mostly they will just go with the majority. And what's easiest. And like I said, there are exceptions to that, but not most of them.
I respect all people because all people are made in God's image, and it's British to respect people. There you go.
Well, you can do that, but anyway, yeah. So I'd like you've got to be Aussie is correct here. This is the general thing.
Well, I think Aussie's just turning into the Sojo of our chat now, but you know.
I don't know. I think Aussie's a bit more base than Sojo. But there you go. That's just me.
Oh, wouldn't go that far.
I would, but you know.
What's wrong with Sojo?
No, I don't. Sojo is all right. I've nothing against him, but I think he's a little bit too individualistic, shall we say.
Yeah, but Aussie cares about equality. I mean, who gives a fuck about the pause?
I don't think Aussie really does care about equality. He just says he does. But yeah.
Well, it's because he's really rich and feels bad about it. I think. I don't know.
What, Sojo? You mean, or Aussie?
No, I don't think. I think Aussie's proper upper class, isn't he?
Oh, he's upper class, but that doesn't make him rich. Those of the upper class are like fairly. Like, they're very upper class, but they're not all that rich.
I think Aussie is. I don't know. I don't want to speak about him in his absence. But...
No, he's not. He's not absent. He's in the chat, mate.
He's in the chat. He's not in the whatever it is stream.
Yeah, but he's having a detox from the internet
while being on the internet.
Well, kind of, I guess. He's not talking, so I kind of like Aussie actually. I think he's.
I like Aussie. Aussie's okay.
But yeah, but I like Sojo too. Is the thing with Sojo is that he's so individualistic. He just wants to disagree with everybody. And I am a firm believer that those of us on the right, if we don't hang together, we're certainly going to be hung separately.
Well, the right isn't really anything at the moment, is it? It's like
exactly, but even more truth to what I say is they're not right. I mean, Lady of Charlotte here. I got to put a thing up here.
I don't even agree with the concept of base.
John McNamara. There are base women in Western countries. I'm one, which I know she is. But it's how they've been brought up and programmed. I grew up in the church in Northern Ireland, an ultra-based place. Fair enough. Absolutely fair enough.
I don't know. We'd have to look at general ideas. I think if you look at it in terms of like political persuasion, except for the current generation, where there's a bit of a difference in terms of like older generations, there isn't really any difference in terms of women's views and men's views on topics. I think for some older generations, women actually tend to come out slightly more conservative than men. I think it was Nancy Astor. It might not have been Nancy Astor.
Oh God, don't mention that bitch. But okay, carry on.
Nancy Astor did a great service to the people of my home.
Did she? How?
She did. Well, there's a nice park quite near me that's got some of her stuff in it that she's bought.
Do carry on. Carry on. I'll say my point when you're finished.
Sorry, what was your point about Nancy Astor?
She was the woman, an American by descent, by the way, who accused the British soldiers fighting in Italy in 1944 of being D-Day dodgers because the British government and the British army had sent them to Italy.
Well, that was deeply unfair.
Was it? Well, yeah, there was. There's actually a damn good song you can look up on YouTube called "We Are the D-Day Dodgers," because, funnily enough, the British casualties in Italy were enormous, and that stupid, dumb American descent bitch came out with that in the British Parliament. So yeah, Nancy Astor, what a good girl she was.
Wait, hang on. How do you feel about Helen of Troy then?
A complete thought. A thought. An absolute thought. Obviously, an absolute thought.
But Nancy Astor said something about women being naturally conservative. I can't remember exactly what she said, but anything you say, she said that people in D-Day were draft. See, people that were fought in Italy were draft dodgers. But which is a position I don't agree with. They vandalized a statue down here quite recently. They said like there's no room for fascism or something on her statue. But the funny thing is that
a left-wing anti-British American woman is the one that the left are going to slag off.
Well, yeah, there was a big campaign down here for quite a long time to get a statue of Nancy Astor put up. I think it was even sponsored by like the liberal arts school. They used to have a big thing outside with like loads of like black women saying Black Power or Black Lives Matter or Black Girl Magic. And then there's a picture of Nancy Astor saying I believed in like the world. I wanted the world to be a better place. Of course, making the world be a better place by taking your husband's seat in Parliament. For the
Conservative Party. Well, I'm not sure, but I think when one of the Winston Churchill stories is about Nancy Astor. He was sitting with her one night at a dinner.
Yeah, nice ironically. Yeah.
Yeah, and during the dinner, Nancy Astor said to Winston Churchill, "Winston, you're drunk." And Winston Churchill turned to her and said, "Yes, but in the morning I'll be sober and you'll still be ugly."
She was very critical of the influence of the Catholic Church and also a different religious sect as well. Interestingly, Nancy Astor.
No, I'm not a fan of Nancy Astor, but there we go.
I think she's right about women in politics. Oh, gee, what is his name as well? wears costumes, does silly videos, sometimes a bit of a shill.
Jolly
Ed
Heretic.
Dutton.
Yeah.
Jolly heretic.
Yeah, he bloody hell, you both guessed that right. He once said in a video, and I've never been able to track down how true this is. He said that for the while after the women got the vote, they were actually voting more conservative than men anyway.
That's true. I think Nancy
Yeah.
has to point that out.
Yeah?
Actually, she was saying
Oh,
that she was saying, "Oh yeah, women are naturally more conservative" or something. I don't know.
I mean, that does seem to be the case as well. Like even today, if you look at, I mean, it depends on the circumstances, but if you look at, for example, America, I think if you delineate the demographics enough, the biggest voting block, the biggest single voting block for Trump was married women with children.
Yeah, I think.
But wasn't there evidence that a lot of married women actually voted the same way their husbands did?
I don't know.
That might be just birds of a feather flock together to an extent. But maybe there's some truth in that. But...
I don't know. I've generally found, like, if I've been with a woman for like more than a year or so, she tends to be more in favour of my political positions than she might have been at the start of it. But I mean, maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Let me think. I've had 3 girlfriends, 2 were Indian, so I don't know. Can't really comment.
Whoa!
One of them, the white one was a UKIPper though. So
all right, I'm gonna play a tune now, guys, in the middle of this show, which I don't normally do, but I'm gonna, because D-Day Dodgers is worth playing. So here we go.
I'm gonna go grab a drink.
Go for it, man. We're gonna have D-Day Dodgers. Hang on. Did I get this right? Right, that can go.
Where the D-Day Dodgers out in Italy, always on the vino, always on the spree. 8th Army scroungers and their tanks, we live in Rome among the Yanks. We are the D-Day Dodgers, way out in Italy. We landed at Salerno, a holiday with pay. The Jerry's got their bands out to greet us on the way. Showed us the sights, they gave us tea. We all sang songs, the beer was free. To welcome D-Day Dodgers to sunny Italy. Naples and Casino were taken in our stride. We didn't go to fight there, just went for the ride. Anzio and Sangro were just names. We only went to look for dames. The artful D-Day Dodgers, way out in Italy. Dear Lady Astor, think you know a lot, standing on your platform, talking Tommy Rot. New England sweetheart and a pride, we think your mouth too bloody white. That's from the D-Day Dodgers, way out in Italy. Look around the mountain in the mud and rain, see the scattered crosses, some which have no name. Heartbreak and toil, suffering gone, the boys beneath them linger on. They are the D-Day Dodgers who'll stay in Italy.
Okay, so there was the D-Day Dodgers, which was a popular song with the British Army in Italy in 1944 and 1945, and fuck Lady Astor. So there we go. That's all I got to say on that one. Gentlemen, anything else to say on that?
No.
Rollo?
What about Lady? I don't know enough about Lady Astor.
Well, you need to look her up, mate, before you bring her up.
Don't know. She probably, I think she was anti-abortion though. So there you go.
She may have had some good sides, but that wasn't one of them. Okay. And like, you know, just for the benefit of anyone who's an absolute moron, which obviously none of the guests on my stream are, where a British soldier was sent in World War II was up to the British government and the British Army. It had nothing to do with him, you know. So all those guys fighting in Italy and dying in Italy were not there because they didn't want to take part in D-Day.
No. I think there was some confusion in the British Army at the time about why the people that had fought in Italy were not fighting as well. And it's probably because they were fucking exhausted from having to fight in Italy, like taking over like one of the biggest powers in the world. You know what I mean? So
yeah, well, it wasn't that, Roy. But what it was that they sent 8th Army units to take part in the D-Day landings, and the 8th Army had been fighting the Germans and Italians in North Africa from 1940 onwards.
Mm.
And so they took some of these blokes who'd been in, I don't know, 15 or 20 battles, and who had then fought in some of the earlier battles in Italy, so another 10 battles. And then they said, okay, guys, now you're going to fight the Germans in Normandy. And some of them had just had enough by that stage.
Mm. Battle fatigue, isn't it? Because they thought they'd be really experienced, but they weren't, obviously, because they were just...
Well, no, they were experienced.
They were
really experienced, but they didn't want to die. No. I mean, you know, every single human being has a limit to how many times you can force him to almost die before he will say, well, I don't really want to do this.
Mm. That's correct.
And that was the mistake of sending some of the 8th Army units to D-Day. But, I mean, it was also done because the British were running out of men by that stage, you know, because Churchill's war had got so huge. I shouldn't call it Churchill's war. It was Hitler's war, but his mistakes had made it so huge by that stage that Britain was actually running out of men by the beginning of 1944. But apparently, according to some people, America was great. So there we go. I'm not an American. Yeah. I'm not an American. Sorry.
I believe the British Armed Forces numbered 3.5 million by the end of 1945.
They did, but huge numbers of them were in the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy.
Hmm.
But the British infantry was running out, so that you had operations like Goodwood and Epsom in Normandy, and don't forget the British Army was facing the British and Canadians, I should say, were facing the vast majority of the German armor. There was hardly any German armor in front of the Americans because the Germans were convinced the Brits and the Canadians were the main threat. So they put most of their armor in front of the British and Canadians. and more than 3/4 of the German tank panzer units were facing the British and Canadians, not the Americans. And we had operations like Epsom and Goodwood, where the Brits and Canadians launched basically tank attacks with hardly any infantry support, because we had hardly any infantry to support them with, and consequently lost loads of tanks. But you'll never see that on an American History Channel. So I don't care. Like I'm a Brit guy. I'm a Britain Old Commonwealth guy. I'm not an American. One of the things that has been pissing me off lately is seeing people like saying, "Oh, the Brits shouldn't slag off the Yanks." Why? Why shouldn't we slag off the Yanks? I don't know. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. We shouldn't have been in Afghanistan for 20 years. I think we should have gone in there, got rid of Al Qaeda, and left.
Completely correct. Yeah.
Yeah, like within a year and a half, we should have been gone. And the fact that we stayed was an American decision, not a British decision.
Well, even past that, Al Qaeda have moved to Pakistan. So.
Yeah, and we're not going to attack them. Well, we're not going to attack them because they got a nuclear bomb apart from anything else.
Indeed.
And like I talked about this on my last stream with Ozzy, that Osama bin Laden was living in like the Pakistan equivalent of Cheltenham.
Yeah.
With a house he'd been given by Pakistani military intelligence.
It's true.
He wasn't living in a cave anywhere in Afghanistan.
What we were doing in Afghanistan was nation building. It's just total shit.
Yeah, and that nation building has been proved to be exactly what it is now, hasn't it?
Fell apart in 6 weeks.
Yeah. Well, not even 3 weeks, really. Because the Afghans weren't willing to fight at all. Well, okay, fair enough. Like I said, my view now is get out as soon as possible with the least number of Afghans possible.
No,
well, it depends. I think like people that have like worked with the British forces to an extent probably do deserve to not be executed.
Not many of them, mate. How many interpreters do you think a large brigade group of the British Army had? I would say you're talking less than 1,000 people there.
Well, if you look at the polls you could say, well, it's not British people's responsibility, but I mean, if you look at the polls in 2000, 2001, people wanted to go into Afghanistan. You can watch the Howard Stern show back and have people listen to people calling in after 9/11 saying we need to get rid of we're just going to nuke the whole Middle East for this. Basically,
you're talking about Americans again, there, mate.
Well, no, I mean, if you look at UK polls, it's the same thing. The Howard Stern thing is the only example I can think of, but I think the general public opinion. I wasn't alive, or I was alive, but I was very, very young. I think the general opinion was at that time that nuke the Middle East, remove kebab. The consequences of that is you've got some people left behind that are not going to be well liked by the opposing forces in Afghanistan. Doesn't necessarily mean take Kabul, but I mean like people who've worked with British forces, we probably do have some level of responsibility towards, I think. But I don't know. Maybe that's a controversial opinion.
Well, like I said, I think that's less than 1,000 people.
I knew some. I used to know some kids actually. Sorry, Karen.
No, you carry on.
I was just going to say. I knew some kids at school who'd had to leave Afghanistan because I think they infiltrated the Taliban and then had to get housed over here. And they fought for the British technically. So I mean, it's the same as the Gurkhas, really, isn't it? In a lot of ways. But
no, the Gurkhas have 200 years of history, which is totally different in my opinion. But there we go.
Okay.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
I suppose.
Yeah, I don't want 200 years of history of Afghanistan. Adam, anything on that?
Well, I mean, Niall Ferguson made the argument some years ago that if America behaved like a proper empire, it would the world would probably be in a better place. And I kind of think that's aged really, really well. Looking at Afghanistan, if America had been willing to go into places like that with the intent of conquering and keeping it for a long period of time, it would probably have ended significantly better than how it's ended now.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Americans have this ludicrous idea that if we can only sell all these people in the third world this so-called democratic system, which in America in particular is extremely corrupt, if we can only sell them that, everything will be okay, which is obviously bollocks and has been totally proved over the last 20 years.
People do forget this. Before the Soviets intervened, Afghanistan was a constitutional monarchy with elections.
Yes,
that was the system it naturally had, and it was after the Soviets intervened that you had the Mujahideen and then the Taliban. I mean, if there wasn't intervention, Afghanistan would be a constitutional monarchy with elections. I think they even had an upper house of lords as well. I think it's called the Council of Elders or something. So it was pretty much similar to the system that we had in the UK.
Yeah, and
before the Soviets intervened,
but the Mujahideen were paid for and armed by the CIA.
Well, yeah, again, the Mujahideen were brought in, and the Soviets were dreadful to the Afghan population. I think the Mujahideen would have taken over anyway, because the Soviet enforced government was not popular at all. Do you know the Soviet Union just used to flatten Afghan villages because
was it as popular as our regime?
Well, okay, that's a separate question. The Soviets killed something like 13% of the Afghan population.
How many did we kill?
Not 13%. We didn't kill
7 or 8%, maybe.
I'd have to check. I don't think we got to the point where we decimated, literally decimated the population.
No, I'm not arguing that like we're more vicious than the Soviets. I wouldn't do that, but I'm pretty sure.
What's the population of Afghanistan? 38 million.
Let's have a look. I think and there was a lot of refugees to Pakistan as well. That's why, and a lot of them actually ended up in the US. People that were fleeing the Soviet government in Afghanistan.
Ozzy makes the points that Soviets would rape women quite frequently, which, if you know anything about the Second World War, is probably true.
There's 33 million people in Afghanistan.
Oh, so I mean, there's been like, what's that, like less than 1% of civilians in Afghanistan have died due to the sort of 20 years of.
Let's have a look, shall we?
Yeah, we.
There's been much longer than 20 years of war in Afghanistan.
Well,
Adam's talking about the Western story there, and we were much nicer than the Soviets. Yes, of course we were. But what we're getting at the moment is people on the right saying, the Taliban and the Afghans are our guys, and they're not.
No, they're not.
They're just not. I mean, they're no more our guys than the fucking Chinese Communist Party are.
Probably even less our guys than the Chinese Communist Party, to be honest.
Yeah, not sounding funny, but my next phone's going to be Chinese. I'm happier with my phone being hacked by the Chinese than by iPhone. Or by Apple.
Yeah, well, I can believe that, but I'm actually not sure that the Mujahideen the Taliban in Afghanistan are less. I think the Taliban in Afghanistan are probably not less our guys than the Chinese Communist Party. But the right is just so desperate at the moment for anything that's winning that we're coming out with this crap.
Yeah, I suppose one thing that does, well, no, it doesn't really prove anything, does it? I don't know. It proves that nothing. I'm not sure. It proves something, or rather. Right, I'm trying to have a look at how many people died in. So we're only counting 2001 to 2021. So that's after the US directly intervened. We're not counting the civil war that was directly before that between the Northern Alliance and the Taliban. No. Which I think they did have. Some had US support, Russian support the Taliban. Let's have a look. Right, casualties. Got that song in my head now. It's a good one. Right, civilian casualties 51,000. So that's an official number, 51,000.
Kind of low.
That is quite low, comparatively to 15% population. Yeah. According to Human Rights Watch, but there's more refugees. 5.7 Since 2001, 5.7 refugees have returned to Afghanistan, but 2.6 million became refugees since 2001. So that's a net of minus something. Minus, what would it be, 3.1 million. Pakistan has taken the largest number, followed by Iran. UK has now resettled 3,000 interpreters and family members since 2001. Yeah, war crimes. Oh dear. Isn't that a shame? There we go. Right, that's the end of me reading that. not very many people. Not comparatively to, you know, we didn't like bomb villages to try and get rid of the Taliban. But yeah.
Maybe we should have. No.
War crimes, Ataman.
Make that Geneva Convention look like a fucking bucket list. That's what I say. Okay, here we've got John McNamara in the chat saying the Chinese and the Taliban are anti-liberal forces that are successfully counting liberalism, whether you like them or not.
Well, okay. Okay. So for example, I think it would be just as easy to say that the Northern Alliance were anti-liberal forces because they have quite a fundamentalist interpretation of Islam as well. Basically, the basis of the Taliban is that they're a Pashtun force. That the Pashtuns are a plurality, but not the majority of people in Afghanistan. Pretty much everyone in the Taliban is Pashtun, and they want to interpret like a Pashtun form of government. I think it's called Pashtun something or other, Pashtunartism, whatever.
But they're always going to run Afghanistan because of where they are.
They're always going to run the south and the east. The north, they're never going to run because now.
Afghanistan is not like a modern nation in the sense that you have a capital and it runs all the places. It doesn't. It's loads of, even valleys are separate from each other. But no one can lead Afghanistan unless they're pushed up.
Yeah, again, I think Mitch has said Pashtunistan. I can't remember what it would say on the Wikipedia what it is, but basically they're Pashtuns. Like I think to an extent the Islamic fundamentalism thing's sort of a maybe you could even argue it's a bit of a cover. They're not supported by the Tajiks. They're not supported by the Uzbeks. They're certainly not supported by the Hazaras, and they're all pretty traditional.
None of those people can run Afghanistan. No.
Well, that's it. It's a separate question. It doesn't mean that the Taliban aren't necessarily an ideological force. They're a load of mountain boys who are Pashtuns who want to run the government.
Run Afghanistan and always.
Well, no, they do. Well, exactly, but
they always have. They ran.
All I'm saying is it's an oversimplification to say it's just an anti-liberal force. It's basically a Pashtun group, right?
Yeah.
These people.
Totally agree.
These people would support liberalism if it came in the form of that was the Pashtun force.
I think Sano's Hamar is correct, saying the Taliban would lob your head off if they got the chance. Yes, they would.
They did. Yeah, they would.
They are not our mates. They're the people who are always going to run Afghanistan, but they are not our friends. In the same way that the Chinese Communist Party are not our friends.
Indeed, it's completely correct.
And people on the right who try and claim that people like the Taliban and the Chinese Communist Party are our friends are fucking idiots. I'm sorry.
Mitch has brought up the Panjshir Valley, the Monwain area that's anti-Taliban. And apparently Massoud is planning on surrendering. Yeah. What I think is most likely to happen, they've had a meeting in Doha in the past, I think, couple of weeks with, I think there's a guy called Abdullah, which is quite a funny name. But he's the second, he finished second in the presidential election. I think even Ashraf Ghani was there. There's a few like government ministers and people meeting with the Taliban in Doha. What I think is quite likely is that they could form a united government and try and get international recognition. But it may not happen. But they're at least meeting.
I'm of the opinion that the sooner we get out of that shithole and with the less Afghans, the better. That's my entire opinion. I don't care what happens to Afghanistan, frankly. I don't care if they decide they all want to flamethrower each other. It's got nothing to do with us. I don't care.
I agree with that position on the whole. But I think, I don't know. You can't be disconnected from the world totally, can you? I suppose. But...
Afghanistan is pretty much totally disconnected from the world.
Okay.
I don't care. 458 British soldiers, only 2 of whom were female, died over there over 20 years. Thousands more were maimed and wounded for no purpose whatsoever. Nothing. And there must be hundreds of British families, mothers and fathers, and sons and daughters and wives saying, why did my son die? Why did my husband die? Why did my dad die? For
totally
nothing.
Right. You're totally right.
Nothing. Over 20 years for nothing.
Totally right. Yeah.
And I think that's the real reason you have so much noise from British politicians these years, because they're trying to distance themselves from the total failure that was the Afghan policy over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear people, sometimes Australian people, turning around and saying, well, the Brits are just slagging off the Yanks because the Brits don't like the fact that the Yanks are more powerful than they are. It isn't that. It is not that. You know, Australia lost 42 people in Afghanistan, one of whom was fighting with the British Army. Not 558. For absolutely nothing. I'm thank God my son's in the Royal Navy, partly because I put him off joining the Army or the Royal Marines, because I could see what a shithole Afghanistan was even 10, 12 years ago. And I didn't want him dying in a useless war. And I don't understand how people cannot see how useless the whole thing was and how utterly pointless. Billions of pounds spent, loads of blood and treasure for absolutely nothing. Nothing whatever.
What if it was for something though? Would you support it then?
If it had been for something, yeah, but it would have to have been for something. What would that something have been? I can't see what it would have been myself.
Stealing the lithium off of the Chinese.
People who claim it's a resource war don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Afghanistan hasn't been stable enough for resource extraction for the last 50 years.
No, and it never will be either. The Chinese won't be able to do it either, in my opinion.
I don't think so.
There's one trade in Afghanistan. There's one trade in Afghanistan. Opium. Yeah, exactly.
Opium, yeah, so. Opium, which went up under Allied rule. Like there was a case where some American Special Forces soldiers beat up an Afghan warlord because he had this like 13-year-old boy who he was fucking in the arse. Yeah, and they got court-martialed for that.
Yeah, I think this was quite a widely known story among some circles.
Yeah, and they got court-martialed for that. Because, you know, we were supporting democracy and buggery of little boys. Sorry, guy. No, don't support that. Don't want people to get killed for that.
Well, it's kind of a shame, isn't it, that Tony Blair hasn't pushed on with his idea of running for leadership, hasn't it? Because this would be quite the blow to him.
I kind of like Tony Blair to become the president of Afghanistan. And I would quite like watching the Taliban bugger him with bayonets. You know, that would be kind of cool. That I'd support for sure. You know, like they did to Gaddafi in Libya. I'd love to see Tony Blair in Gaddafi's position in Libya. I'd kind of cheer that. And hopefully his vile missus would be with him. But yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm not a supporter of any of that shit. Ozzy is saying, what about the women? Fuck the women. Don't care. Don't care. They're Afghan women. They're not our women. Let them get on with Afghan men. Hang on, what we have here? John McNamara. Soon he will say limited anal sex is okay. Who is supposed to be saying that?
Me, I think. I don't think limited anal sex is okay. I mean, I don't know. What
Yeah.
would limited anal sex even look like? I don't know. I want to think.
Mr. X is saying you guys are all Sibnap fakes. And he's also saying, oh yeah, I got a pseudo posh accent. Don't know where that comes from.
What, me?
I don't know. You're the only person who could conceivably have a pseudo posh accent on here.
Don't know, mate. I think I'm just from the south of England. That's how I sound, mate.
Yeah, I reckon so. He'd get all Essex if you were in the pub with him. He's a bit drunk. The only guy on this stream who comes on regularly who has a genuinely posh accent is Aussie, to be honest. He has a genuinely posh accent. Old boy. Old chap. But yeah, so yeah, I don't care about any of that shit, to be honest with you. All right, guys, we're going to turn to our final subject for our last half hour, and we're going to talk about lockdowns.
Well, I'm going to need to shoot off anyway, so.
Go on, you can go.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, coward. Yeah, coward.
I've got to go and chill for Sivnet somewhere else.
No, you're already joking. I'm only joking. I know you said you could only be on for a while.
I'll talk to you later.
Go on, man. Go on. All right, lockdowns, gentlemen. So I'm sitting in Victoria, Australia, where we have. I'm not allowed to go more than 5 kilometers beyond my home. We have a curfew from 9 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning because we all know that the China virus comes out to play at night. Everything is shut, like apart from supermarkets, bottle stores, and the occasional newsagent, everything is shut. And they're saying you're not going to get your freedom back until 80% of people have been vaccinated. And this is a vaccination that doesn't work because 60% of the people in hospital in the UK, for example, at the moment, are people who have been vaccinated. I just don't know what to say about any of this stuff, to be honest with you. Apart from we're just accepting Stalinist rules that are put in place on the excuse of public health. And this is for a virus that at the very worst has an over 99% survival rate.
Well, indeed, I think one thing that I might call me a bit of a cuck for this, but I think vaccination has seemed to have dropped the virility of how much the virus does, kill them. We're entering into the autumn months now. There's still, in this country, I think like 37,000 cases a day, and there's only like 100 deaths, if that. And a lot of these.
Hang on, Rollo. Go and look on today's BBC website, or it might be yesterday's now, when they said that the British China virus deaths have gone up.
Well, relative to the percentage death, I think is way lower than it was.
No. British China virus deaths have just gone up. It's on the BBC website. I don't think that makes it true because the bias brainwashing corporation is what it is, but
So this week okay for. So on so there's been 100 on the 27th. There was 100 deaths on the 27th of August registered on the 27th of August. How many cases were there? With 37,690 cases. So that's what.
How many of what was the age of those 100 deaths? Can you?
Well, exactly. That? They're going to be fucking 90-year-olds, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to be people in the 90s who would have been dead one way or another from something else.
Yeah.
It's just bollocks. It's like I don't know. All right, I've got to answer Anglo Nile here. Where's Soju these days? 1999. true. Sojo doesn't want to stream anymore, so
He's got he's got a Twitter account, his real name actually, that he posts on as Sojo.
Yeah, no, he's got a Twitter account, but he
If
doesn't
you want, I'll link it to you. No,
no, don't need to. But he doesn't want to stream anymore, Anglo Nile, so he doesn't stream. So that's the end of that one. Where are we apart from that? There was something else I wanted to put up.
I don't know. I would just say, like, I think with the COVID restrictions, I think it's more about the sort of triumph of fear. Fear has taken hold of the general population. And it's a lack of principles, and I think Peter Hitchens made the point that we don't have that basis in any kind of thought, any kind of religious belief, or even perhaps you could say a civilizational belief. There's a belief in deeper things that underpins. You could even say, for example, like a belief in ideology. Like you could say, like the American founding fathers probably would say, no, this is obviously tyranny, because they believed in things. They had a basis. They had you could say a racination or a rooting in these deeper kind of things, and we don't have that anymore. So it's the triumph of fear, triumph of fear over deeper values. That's what I'd say. Is why this has been allowed to happen.
All right, in Australia, Rollo, we have had pregnant women arrested in their homes in front of their families. We've had Australian military veterans have their front door busted down by the Victorian police to arrest them. We had a bloke who helped organise an anti-lockdown protest given 6 months in prison just recently. And the whole of the mainstream media in Australia is just constantly, you must get vaccinated, you must get tested, you must get vaccinated. And obviously these vaccines have not been properly tested. This has only been going on 18 months. And we know that they collect in the ovaries of women and in the in the bone marrow of men and women, which was not apparently what the scientists thought was going to happen, but that's what is happening. And we know that even two vaccinations will not stop you catching this, supposedly. I think it's just going to go on forever, mate. And I reckon what's going to happen is the Northern Hemisphere is now heading into the autumn. And I think what's happening in Australia right now is going to happen in like Britain and many Northern Hemisphere nations come the winter.
Well, what was her name? Jacinda Ardern, whatever her name is, in New Zealand. She locked down because of one. She locked down because of one case. So I mean, like,
the whole nation.
I don't think any government in Western Europe would lock down because of one case. So I wouldn't say I would go as far as to say that we'd have Australians.
Never say never, Rollo.
I don't think. Well, I don't want to say never, but I think it's unlikely that they'd lock down for one case. I think perhaps governments in Western Europe have taken a different edge. It wouldn't surprise me if we re-lock down in the autumn or the winter, which obviously would be a terrible thing. I think generally speaking, I think the best thing is if people just have the right to make their own medical decisions over this kind of thing.
Well, I totally agree with that, but it seems to be like everyone these days is being treated like they were a criminal or a small child, unless, of course, your mother wants to change your gender, in which case it's okay. But in other respects, as a small child, I just think it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I hope. I don't know. Like, I think you can sort of see even in fairly mainstream media some sort of like. I think the word is sort of like distaste in the policies. I think even from the mainstream, there's some distaste in the policies that have been passed in New Zealand, Australia. It's just absolutely dreadful. Some of the policies that are going through and the vilification of the people that have opposed.
Rollo, if you look on YouTube, and you can, at all of the Australian mainstream media news companies, Sky News isn't terrible, although they have really scaled it back since YouTube banned them for a week. But all of the other mainstream.
I'm not talking about in Australia. I'm talking about over here. But
yeah, well, I watch your guys' news on YouTube too. But like, if you look at all of the mainstream media news companies in Australia, what you will find is almost every video they put up about China virus and the lockdowns is very heavily downvoted, but all of the comments are stopped. They won't allow comments on any of them because they get so psyched off.
Yeah.
And like, I think, you guys, you're looking at Australia and you're thinking, oh, fucking Australia's mad. I reckon Australia is being used as a testing ground because we're in the middle of winter at the moment.
Oh, of course you are, aren't you?
Yeah. This is the middle of winter in Australia. Well, actually getting towards the end of winter, getting towards spring. But we're being used as testing ground, and all this shit that we have down here is coming your way within 2 or 3 months.
Possibly. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there was another lockdown. I'm not sure if the governments of the West have taken the zero COVID approach of Mrs. whatever her name is, but excuse me.
Yeah, she has an almost unpronounceable name. Yes, that's in New South Wales. But look in Victoria where I am, and Dan, chairman of the People's Republic of Victoria, he locked us down. I think this is our 5th or 6th lockdown, and he said it was going to be for a week, and it's now gone on for a month, and it looks like it's now going on until the end of, certainly until the beginning of summer. And Australians are fucked off with it, but what the fuck can we do? They are firing plastic bullets at civilians on anti-lockdown marches. They are manhandling and pepper spraying 12-year-old little schoolgirls because they're not wearing masks. How on earth can this be acceptable in a modern Western Anglosphere nation? Like Stalin never did anything this bad in that respect.
Well, yeah.
It's as Lady Charlotte is saying in the chat, it's just ridiculous. We're being used as testing ground, and all of this shit is coming your way when the winter comes.
I think if such draconian policies has happened in New Zealand happened over here, I have enough respect for my fellow countrymen to think that perhaps there'd be some level of opposition. But I don't know. If like you're saying, we're going to have these pepper spraying 11-year-olds and tuning up all the play parks, then we'll have to see, won't we?
Well, I mean, as Lady of Charlotte says here in the chat, Dan is a demon and us a demon. They killed the rescue dogs this week to prevent people driving more than 5 kilometers to come and collect them to give them a home. These were homeless dogs who had already been found families, and the Australian police shot them to make sure no one came and collected them. And when I was in the army, if someone had told me to go and shoot a load of healthy dogs to stop people, I would have told them to get fucked. But apparently, Australian police, we'll just do whatever you say. Joseph Stalin, sir.
It's dreadful.
I don't get it, guys. I just don't get it, mate. And for the person who earlier said, "Oh, I hate the race of women," no, I don't. I love women. I think women are beautiful. They are lovely. They are decorative. They are sexy. They are cute.
Just changing the subject quickly. Yeah.
I just don't care about their politics, to be honest. All right. I mean, there are, like I've said before, there are good women, like Lady Schlott, for example, who has very good ideas on politics, but mostly they don't. Mostly they're just cute.
Well.
It's just funny to me that a young guy like you laughs on that, whereas most people.
Well, no. What do you want me to say? I think I don't know. I don't disagree necessarily. I just thought it was funny if you just say it. That's all. It's entertainment value. I'm sure everyone else is watching because it's entertaining.
Well, I hope so. But anyway, yeah, all right, we're nearly done, I reckon. I like the other day. Yesterday, I was trying to go to the coast because I didn't want to go to the bay, which is this enormous bay around Melbourne. So I wanted to actually see the real ocean. And I got stopped by a cop. And he was a nice guy, actually. He was a country cop, not a city cop. And he didn't fine me, which he could have done, like $1,400 or whatever the fuck it is. But he said to me, if I carried on to the nature reserve I was going to, there was another roadblock in front of that nature reserve. Because obviously me, a woman, and a small little dog going to a nature reserve was going to catch us COVID and spread COVID to other people. It's just so fucking ludicrous. How thick are people before they wake up to like, this has got a 99.5% survival rate. If you are not very, very old and very, very sick.
Yeah.
And if COVID doesn't kill you, something else will for sure. Probably flu actually will kill you. Like Australia gets about 4,000 flu deaths a year, although strangely we've had none this year.
Indeed,
according to government figures. According to government figures, which are obviously correct.
Yeah.
It's like people have got to wake up. They have to wake up that this is nothing whatsoever to do with this so-called pandemic. It's all about control. And if we don't stop it, we are heading for a situation that would make Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union look great.
Well, it's always good to end on a high note, isn't it, Jake?
No, mate, I'm, like I said before, when we started, I said I'm getting more and more black pill, mate.
Okay.
I really am. I'm getting to the stage where, like, I don't know what's going to happen in the world, but it ain't going to be good. You know?
Well, let's wait and see. Hasn't he?
Yeah, anyway. Okay, well, I think that's probably enough. And we are going to finish on a high note because we always play ourselves out with a tune. How do I say? You won't say me, mate. If anyone says me, it'll be me. Anyway, we're going to play ourselves out on a tune, as we always do. And this is a high note because it's a traditional tune, very often played in the Royal Navy in the Nelson era. And it's great.
When mighty roast beef was the Englishman's food, it ennobled our veins and enriched our blood. Our soldiers were brave and our courtiers were good. Oh, the roast beef of old England and old English roast beef. But since we have learned from all vapor in France to eat the ragouts as well as to dance, we are fed up with nothing but vain complaisance. Oh, the roast beef of old England and old English roast beef. Our fathers of old were robust, stout, and strong, and kept open house with good cheer all day long, which made their plump tenants rejoice in this song. Oh, the roast beef of old England and old English roast beef. When good Queen Elizabeth sat on the throne, near coffee and tea and such slip-slops were known, the world was in terror if e'er she did frown. Oh, the roast beef of old England and old English roast beef. In those days, if fleets did presume on the main, they seldom or never returned back again, as witness the vaunting armada of Spain. Oh, the roast beef of Old England and Old English roast beef. Britannia's high trident still waving on high, bitter tars all be true and their foes all defy. To avenge all their wrongs they will conquer or die, like brave jolly tars of Old England, the conquering brave British tars. Now fill up a glass while a bumper we have to Howe, Jervis, Duncan, and Nelson the brave, to the bold British tars who now rule on the wave. Huzzah for the bulwarks of England, and health to each bold British tar.
Well, that was the roast beef of Old England, which was often played on the warships of Nelson's navy. And as Going the Edge says in the chat, the French used to call the British the roast beefs. They did, as we always beat them. But anyway, thank you for joining us, ladies and gents. Please remember to subscribe and like the channel. And we'll see you next week. Although, if things go according to plan, I might have a Old Commonwealth stream with Jobu and possibly someone from Canada on Thursday. But if not, we'll see you next Saturday. Go well and hang tough. Good night, ladies and gents.
God bless.